You never really know a man until he's standing over you, deciding whether you live or die. People talk about evil like it's a monster in a movie. Fangs, blood, and thunder. But the truth is quieter. Evil looks like the man who once whispered that he couldn't breathe without you. The same man who bought you roses, kissed your forehead, and said, "You're safe with me." My name is Claire. I was the wife who believed him. We'd been married 7 years when I began noticing small things. Late-night calls, whispered conversations, financial papers he didn't want me to see. He said I was too emotional. That old trick men use when they want you to doubt your own eyes. Then came the new insurance policy, $1 million policy, just in case. He made it sound like love, like he was protecting me. But even love can be a weapon when it's written in fine print. The night it happened, the air itself felt wrong, thick, heavy, like the world knew before I did. He poured me wine, lit candles, played our wedding song. We danced, and I remember thinking how beautiful it all was. His smile didn't tremble once. Then my vision blurred, the room spun, the music melted into a distant hum. His voice was soft as I collapsed. "Shh, baby. Just sleep." My heart pounded once, twice, then silence. That's the thing about dying. You don't know it's happening until you're floating somewhere above yourself, staring at the life you built and wondering where it all went wrong. I saw my own body, my hand still holding his sleeve, as if I couldn't let go. He called someone, calmly, said there'd been an accident, that I'd fallen. His voice was perfect. Grieving husband, broken man. I watched him pull the ring off my finger before the ambulance came. He didn't even look at me. He just pocketed it. When I woke again, it wasn't fire or brimstone that surrounded me. It was emptiness, the kind of silence that stretches for miles. Hell isn't a place. It's the sound of your own scream echoing back with no one to hear it. I don't know how long I was there. Days, months, maybe minutes. Time didn't exist. Just pain, regret, and a whisper that said, "You're not finished yet." When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed. Tubes, machines, white light. A nurse gasped when she saw me move. "You're awake," she whispered, like she didn't believe it. Turns out, I'd been in a coma for 2 weeks. They said my husband visited once, for 10 minutes. Never came back. He told everyone I was gone. Planned the funeral, filed the insurance claim, transferred accounts. I'd been erased from my own life. And that's when I realized, maybe I didn't die for nothing. Maybe I was meant to come back. Not for redemption, but for reckoning. The old me, the woman who trusted him, who made excuses, she did die that night. The woman who woke up in her place was something else entirely. When I looked in the mirror for the first time after waking, I didn't recognize the eyes staring back. They were colder, sharper. I saw the reflection of every lie he ever told me. The doctors called me lucky. I smiled. Lucky isn't the right word for what I felt. Chosen was closer. He thought he buried me under paperwork and poison. But he forgot one thing. The dead don't owe the living anything. Not forgiveness, not mercy, not silence. I left that hospital with no family, no money, and no home. Just one name written in my mind like a prayer. Michael, my loving husband, my murderer. I didn't want to kill him. Number. Death would have been too easy. I wanted him to live long enough to lose everything he ever thought he owned, starting with peace. Because when I came back, I didn't come back as his wife. I came back as his consequence. The first thing I learned after waking from the coma was this: the world moves on without you. Your name fades from mailboxes, your bank account freezes, your friends stop calling. You become a story people tell at dinner, a tragedy to make themselves feel grateful for their own lives. But I wasn't a tragedy. I was a ghost walking through my own story, and I was about to rewrite the ending. When I was discharged, I had nothing but a plastic bag with my clothes, a scar along my neck, and a fire in my chest that refused to die. The nurses smiled, wished me luck, and handed me a pamphlet about trauma recovery. I thanked them, but what I really needed was resurrection. Michael thought he'd buried me with the rest of his mistakes. He didn't realize he'd just given me a front-row seat to his downfall. I spent my first night in a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon lights and the smell of cigarette smoke baked into the walls. I sat there for hours, replaying every detail of that night. His voice, his calmness, the way he didn't even flinch when I collapsed. At first, I wanted to disappear, to start over somewhere he'd never find me. But the more I thought about him, about how easily he slept while I lay between life and death, the more I understood that peace wasn't an option. Revenge isn't rage, it's precision, it's patience, it's the quiet rebuilding of the person he thought he destroyed. So that's what I did. The hospital had given me a temporary phone. I searched his name. Michael Hartman, real estate investor. His face filled the screen. Smiling, confident, already attending charity events and interviews about overcoming personal loss. My death had turned him into a minor celebrity, a grieving husband with $1 million payout. I laughed, not out of humor, out of disbelief. He was living my death like it was his promotion. So I started small. First, I called the insurance company. I didn't tell them who I was, of course, just a concerned citizen asking about a claim made under suspicious circumstances. I asked questions, dropped hints, and left breadcrumbs that would take weeks to trace. Then, I searched the public database for property deeds. He'd sold our house. Of course he had. And he'd used the money to buy something bigger, flashier, colder, a penthouse downtown. Perfect. The next few weeks, I built a life out of silence and small moves. I got a job under a different name, in a different city. I found a friend in an old lawyer, someone who used to handle Michael's contracts. He didn't recognize me at first, not until I told him things only she would know. The look on his face was priceless. "Claire, what do you want from me?" he asked. "Justice," I said. "But I'll settle for the truth." He told me everything. The insurance fraud, the offshore accounts, the fake witnesses. The plan had been perfect. I was supposed to die quietly, my body cremated, and Michael to move on with both our wealth and his mistress. Ah yes, her, Samantha, 27, his business assistant. She'd moved into my place before my obituary even printed. You'd think it would hurt, but it didn't. Pain requires love, and I had none left. What I felt was clarity, like a puzzle finally snapping into place. One night, I stood outside their new home. The building glowed like a glass coffin. High ceilings, white marble, everything sterile and perfect. I watched them through the window, laughing, drinking wine. My wine, my glass set, my world, stolen piece by piece. And I whispered to myself, "You have no idea what's coming." Because the thing about coming back from hell is this: you don't return as the same person. You come back immune to fear, immune to guilt, immune to everything that once kept you obedient. The woman he murdered was soft, forgiving, naive. The woman watching him now was a storm with a name. Before I left that night, I slipped a letter into his mailbox. just a single white envelope with 3 words written in red ink. I remember everything. No name, no address, just the truth, dressed as a ghost. I didn't need him to believe it was me. Not yet. I just needed him to wonder. Because doubt is the first crack, and once a man like Michael starts to doubt, everything else begins to collapse. The next morning, when Melanie was out at brunch with her friends, I sat at the dining room table with a stack of old boxes. Bank statements, legal letters, and the dreaded divorce paperwork. Everything I had avoided since Ryan and I split. If I was going to take my house back, I needed answers. I flipped through page after page, my stomach tightening as I saw his signature, my signature, and the smug scrawl of his lawyer. My eyes blurred as the words swam in front of me. Transfer of ownership, quitclaim deed, asset distribution. And there it was, in black and white. Ryan hadn't just taken half my savings in the divorce. He'd taken the deed to the house, our parents' house, and quietly transferred it into Melanie's name. My hands trembled as I traced the signature at the bottom. Mine. God, I had signed it. I slammed the file shut, tears stinging my eyes. The betrayal was so layered it was almost laughable. My ex-husband and my sister working together. I didn't know which felt worse, the loss of the house or the realization that the 2 people closest to me had plotted against me. But as the tears dried, something else rose up inside me. Not just anger, not just hurt. Strategy, because if they could scheme behind my back, so could I. That night, I sat in my room with a notebook, jotting down everything I knew about Melanie. Her habits, her weaknesses, the secrets she wouldn't want anyone to know. She had always been reckless. Drunk driving tickets, credit card debt, boyfriends she bled dry. And now she had something she valued more than anything: status. The house wasn't just walls and a roof to her. It was her stage, her trophy. If I could crack that image, if I could expose her flaws in front of the very people she was trying to impress, I could bring her down. The first opportunity came faster than I expected. Melanie's housewarming party. Invitations were sent to half the city. Lawyers, real estate moguls, even a local councilman. She wanted everyone to see her grand new life, and I was expected to serve hors d'oeuvres like a hired hand. As I laid out trays of food that evening, I overheard Melanie bragging in the living room. Yes, Daddy always said I'd be the one to carry the family name. Claire? She was never really cut out for this lifestyle. Sweet, but ordinary. Laughter rippled through the crowd. My cheeks burned, but I didn't storm in, I didn't shout. Instead, I slipped quietly into her office upstairs. I had watched her type in the password to her laptop a dozen times. Her birthday. Typical. The screen flickered to life, and within minutes, I was staring at emails, bank statements, and photos that Melanie would never want the world to see. Credit card bills in collections, letters from creditors threatening lawsuits, pictures with men whose names her friends and colleagues would definitely recognize. My heart pounded. This wasn't just leverage. This was dynamite, and I was about to light the fuse. After that day, I stopped being the woman he once knew. I stopped being the woman who begged, who pleaded, who cried. I was done mourning the life he tried to bury. He thought I was gone for good, erased, forgotten. But what he didn't realize was that pain can resurrect a woman in ways love never could. I started from zero, a new name, a new city, a job that paid barely enough to eat but gave me something far more valuable: anonymity. I didn't want to be found, not yet. The fire inside me wasn't about revenge at first, it was survival. But when you sit alone night after night, haunted by what someone did to you, revenge starts whispering, and those whispers soon turn into plans. I tracked his life from afar. Social media, public records, old contacts. He was living our dream. in the house I designed with the money that was supposed to build our future. And next to him was someone new, young, naive, smiling, just like I used to. It made me sick. Not because she replaced me, but because I knew what was coming for her. He hadn't changed. Men like him never do. They just find new victims. That was when I made my choice. If I came back from hell, I wasn't coming back empty-handed. I was coming for him, but I couldn't walk into his life screaming, "I'm back, number." Revenge is a slow dance, and I was going to make him lead every step. So I started building my return, quietly, strategically. I learned where he worked, an investment firm in the city. I found out his routine, his habits, his weaknesses, and then I began to build the one thing he'd never expect, a version of myself he wouldn't recognize. I changed everything, my appearance, my voice, even my walk. I trained myself to control my emotions like a mask, to hide the storm that raged inside me behind a calm, confident smile. It took 2 years, 2 long, bitter years of preparation. But when I was finally ready, I looked in the mirror and whispered, "She's gone. The woman he buried doesn't exist anymore." I applied for a job at his firm under a new identity, Elena Moore. It took time, effort, and forged documents. But when pain fuels your purpose, nothing feels impossible. And one ordinary Monday morning, I walked through the glass doors of his company, heels clicking, chin high, heart steady. I saw him before he saw me, standing at the end of the hallway, surrounded by his team, laughing that same fake laugh he always had when he was trying to impress people. For a second, my chest tightened. I saw flashes. The betrayal, the night he left me bleeding, the life he stole. But then I reminded myself, that woman died. I'm just here to collect the debt. He turned, mid-conversation, and his eyes brushed over me, not a flicker of recognition. Just another face in the crowd. Perfect. Days turned into weeks. I became the ghost haunting his empire, the shadow in his meetings, the quiet presence that started to slip into his orbit without him even realizing it. He started trusting me, asking for my input, praising my loyalty. Oh, the irony. But it wasn't just him I was watching. It was her, his new wife, Lily. I'd see her name on his phone when he ignored her calls. I'd hear him flirt with coworkers behind her back. She was me, trapped in the same illusion, walking the same path toward destruction. I wanted to warn her. But no, she had to learn the truth the same way I did, by watching his mask slip, because the only way to kill a monster is to let him reveal himself. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The stage was set, the players were in position, and for the first time in years I felt alive, not as his victim, not as his wife, but as the woman he tried to destroy, back from hell, wearing a smile he'd never forget. I learned one cold truth sitting behind his desk. Empires never fall because of one thunderclap. They fall because the people inside them stop believing the story. My job was simple: rewrite his story until no one else wanted to be part of it. SFX. Soft office hum, printer stuttering, shoes on marble. I had a seat in his meetings now. I watched how he operated, charm like oil, deadlines like promises, flattery like currency. He surrounded himself with people who reflected him, polished, willing, hungry. But underneath the shine were seams I could pry. You don't take down a man in public, you make the public do it for you. So I began to reorganize perception, subtle corrections, small dents, strategic irritations, the kind of work that looks like coincidence until it's too late. First, I targeted his advisors, the men who signed papers without reading them. I left a seed at a cocktail party, a hushed conversation about a mismanaged portfolio. I spilled a single detail to a veteran client who'd been loyal to Michael, because loyalty is fragile when money trembles. Next, I manipulated paperwork. I never falsified anything blatantly. I rearranged contexts, nudged emails where they would be read by the wrong pair of eyes, and forwarded innocuous attachments with a comment that suggested negligence. A missing comma here, a mislabeled invoice there. The sort of clerical sins that look like human error, until the auditors sniff blood. Montage. A spreadsheet with a wrong column header. A voicemail accidentally forwarded to a board member. A deposit slip with a transposed number. SFX. Keyboard clicks, a file uploading, a phone ping. Then there were the relationships. Easy to break because they were built on convenience. I sent messages from anonymous addresses revealing small betrayals. Nothing savage, only truth served cold. A partner who'd thought himself indispensable found clients pulling accounts. A junior executive who'd been sleeping with a client got exposed in an internal thread I made visible. Trust evaporates faster than money. I watched as he began to lose his grip. He came to meetings late, defensive. He started micromanaging, sending emails at 3 a.m. as if sheer effort could patch holes he'd ignored for years. His temper grew thin, his generosity shrank. People stepped back from the man who no longer commands calm. But the masterpiece of dismantling was reputation. Money can be recovered. Reputation cannot. I knew where his pride lived. Charity boards, gala nights, public speaking. I sent one well-placed tip to a journalist about a questionable donation. I leaked a copy of an invoice that made his generosity look like a front for laundering. The paper ran the story with a headline that felt like acid. SFX. Camera shutters, a newsroom chatterbed, a headline snapping into focus. His image, the one he cultivated on magazine covers and charity nights, began to crack under scrutiny. Children's foundations he'd spoken at for years started distancing themselves. Board members resigned gracefully, but quickly. The invitations stopped coming. Inside the office, his team bickered. Without the illusion of infallibility, loyalty turned transactional. People who once covered for him began whispering in hallways. I sat at my desk and read the messages, savoring each hesitating clause. It was as if the company slowly realized it had been built on a ledger of favors and falsified numbers. SFX. Elevator doors, a murmured argument dissolving. I never confronted him directly. I let him walk into the traps I set. A missed deadline that became a regulatory red flag. An unsigned contract that would look suspicious in an audit. A whistleblower who, nudged by me, decided the truth was worth a legal fight. Each event was small alone. An ember. Together, they created a fire that would be difficult to smother. There is art in timing. You cannot burn everything at once. You must let suspicion do its work. A CEO who can't sleep is a CEO who loses perspective. He began to call old favors he'd never paid back and got replies that were polite but empty. The phone stopped ringing with business offers and started ringing with lawyers. SFX, a phone line being disconnected. And then the social collapse began. The girlfriend, the woman who had been living in my house, felt the tremors. Invitations stopped for her too. She hadn't built relationships, only appropriated them. Rumors whisper their own justice. At a charity luncheon, she asked an old contact why he no longer returned her calls. He looked at her like she was the problem, not him. Humiliation is surgical when delivered in public. Watching him shrink was not joyless. It was precise. I didn't want his death, only the slow, unavoidable erosion of everything he enjoyed. Power, admiration, comfort. I wanted him to feel the waiting and the dread I had felt on that floor, because living with that kind of guilt is its own cruelty. I kept a journal of the changes, dates, emails, a map of who left and why. It became a ledger against him, a mirror of the life he thought he owned. Sometimes, late at night, I read those pages and let myself feel the chill of satisfaction. Not of hatred, but of completion, of balance restored in a small ecosystem he had polluted. There are moments when revenge is almost mundane. A client cancels, a partner resigns, a gala declines the invitation. It's ordinary, small defeats. But strung together, they form a downfall that looks inevitable in hindsight. SFX, wind against a high-rise window, the low throb of a city that never sleeps. I never gloat. The work is made of silence. I let the court of public opinion do its slow work. I let auditors, journalists, and former friends turn their eyes away from him. I let the world that once admired him measure him by a different yardstick, integrity, not charm. And while his empire wavered, I kept walking forward, careful not to step into his ruin too soon. The dismantling was not the end. It was the necessary clearing before a reckoning that would feel inevitable to everyone who watched. Because dismantling is not merely about taking away, it's about making a man face what he has become, alone, exposed, and finally free of the lies that kept him alive. The cracks had turned into craters. His reputation was bleeding in public, his company faltering, his allies scattering like smoke. But men like Michael don't go down quietly, not when their entire identity is built on control. And as I watched from the shadows, I saw the monster begin to fight back. He started with damage control, press statements, emergency meetings, fake smiles for the cameras. He called it a smear campaign, claiming jealous competitors were out to ruin him. But denial only works when people still believe in you, and belief was the one currency he'd already spent. Inside the office, the atmosphere changed. Where there was once laughter and confidence, now there was fear. Quiet, contagious fear. He started holding closed-door meetings, locking people out, yelling more often than talking. I watched through glass walls as he stood alone at his desk, tie loosened, hands gripping his head. That was my favorite part. Watching him realize that power only feels real when people obey. Take away their respect, and he's just another desperate man yelling into an empty room. But Michael wasn't stupid. He had built his life on manipulation. And once he sensed something, someone, was behind his downfall, he started hunting. SFX. Keyboard typing, mouse clicks, a faint, ominous drone. He ordered an internal investigation. He started combing through emails, tracing anonymous messages, trying to find his phantom enemy. And one day, I felt it. The air changed. A small, subtle shift in the way he looked at me. He didn't recognize me, not really. But some instinct whispered to him that I wasn't like the others. The next week he invited me to lunch. A quiet, friendly invitation. The kind of trap he used to set for people before breaking them. I agreed, of course. We met at a glass-walled restaurant overlooking the city. He ordered wine. I asked for water. For a man on the edge, he still had that mask. Perfect smile, perfect posture, every word polished. "Tell me something, Elena," he said, stirring his drink. "How does someone like you end up here? You're sharp. You could have gone anywhere." I smiled, playing my part. "Oh, I like watching powerful men work." He chuckled. "Dangerous hobby." The silence that followed stretched. Not awkward, but charged. He looked at me for a long time, as if searching for a ghost hiding in my eyes. And for a split second, I wondered, did he know? Could he feel the shadow of what he'd done to me standing right in front of him? Then he looked away and changed the subject. But his tone had shifted. Polite, guarded. He knew something was off. He just didn't know what. That night, I went home shaken. I had built this mask so perfectly, but I forgot one thing. He had once known me better than anyone. He knew my tells, my tone, my eyes. And even though my face had changed, there was something about my energy he recognized. From that day, he started watching me. Not obviously, subtly. A lingering look in the hallway, a sudden pause when I entered a room, a casual question about my past. I knew I was walking a knife's edge. If I wasn't careful, all of it, the plan, the years of rebuilding, could vanish with one careless slip. But I also knew something else. Fear makes men predictable. He would overreact, and that overreaction would destroy him faster than I ever could. So I used his suspicion. I fed it, slowly. A misplaced document here, a rumor there. I made sure he found traces of a traitor. Not enough to identify, but enough to consume him with paranoia. And it worked. He started accusing people, firing loyal employees, pushing away allies. The more he tried to control, the faster everything spiraled. I stood by quietly, pretending to help him fix the mess. The loyal assistant, the calm voice in chaos. All the while, I was the one feeding the fire behind the scenes. And then one day, it happened. He burst into the office red-faced, holding a printed email, one that I had written from an anonymous account. He slammed it onto the conference table and shouted, "Find out who sent this! I'll ruin them!" The team looked stunned. I looked innocent. But what made it perfect was that the email contained one undeniable truth, a financial cover-up he had committed years ago. No one could disprove it because it was real. The next day, regulators came knocking. Investigations began. Reporters camped outside his office, and Michael, the man who once controlled everything, was now a prisoner of his own lies. I watched as he stormed through the halls, screaming orders no one obeyed anymore. The empire he'd built on deceit was caving in on itself, and he had no idea that the woman who destroyed it was sitting right across from him, smiling, silent, patient. But revenge isn't a straight line. It's a circle, and before the end, it always turns back on you. Because as I watched him fall apart, I realized something I hadn't expected. He wasn't the only one haunted by ghosts. I was too. His empire was crumbling, piece by piece. Every secret he buried was clawing its way to the surface, and I didn't even have to lift a finger anymore. The lies were doing the work for me. But as his world fell apart, something strange began to happen inside me. The satisfaction that once burned so brightly started to dim. Each time I watched him lose another friend, another contract, another piece of his perfect image, I expected to feel victory. Instead, I felt empty. Maybe it was because I saw the same exhaustion in his eyes that once lived in mine. The sleepless nights, the trembling hands, the silent guilt that eats away at your soul. It was ironic, really. I had become everything he made me, cold, calculating, merciless. I told myself it was justice, that I was balancing the scales, but deep down I knew this wasn't justice anymore. It was survival, dressed up as revenge. One morning, I walked into the office and found him sitting alone in the conference room. No staff, no calls, no noise. Just him staring out the window, the sunlight outlining a man who had finally lost his reflection. "Elena," he said quietly, without turning around, "do you ever get the feeling that the universe is punishing you for something you don't remember doing?" I froze. His voice wasn't sharp or arrogant like before. It was tired, human. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. "I think," I replied carefully, "the universe only gives back what we give it." He smiled faintly, still not looking at me. Then I must have given it hell. That sentence hit harder than he knew, because he was right. He had given hell to everyone around him, and I had just delivered it back. A week later, the inevitable happened. The company went under investigation. His accounts were frozen. His friends vanished. The woman he'd replaced me with left without a word. And through it all, I stayed invisible. The loyal employee, the quiet observer, the ghost he never recognized. But one night, as I was packing up the last of my files, he appeared at my desk. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and for the first time in years, he looked like a man, not a machine. "I know who you are," he whispered. The air left my lungs. Every instinct told me to deny it, to lie, to walk away. But something in his tone made me stay. He placed an old photograph on my desk. It was me, the real me, standing in our old garden, smiling, before everything went to hell. "I don't know how you survived," he said, voice shaking. "But part of me is glad you did." I stared at him, searching for the manipulation, the act, the mask. But there was nothing. Just a man stripped bare by his own sins. "You took everything from me," I said. "My trust, my peace, my life." He nodded slowly. "And I took it from myself, too. That's what men like me do. We destroy everything we touch." For a long moment, silence filled the room, and for the first time since the night he tried to end me, I saw regret in his eyes. Not fear, not guilt, real regret. I should have felt vindicated, but instead all I felt was tired, because revenge doesn't give back what was stolen. It just replaces your pain with a different kind. I gathered my things, turned to leave, and said softly, "This was never about destroying you. It was about proving to myself that I could survive you." He looked down, defeated. "And did you?" I paused at the door. "I'm still trying." That was the last time I saw him. The next morning he was gone, vanished from the city without a trace. No arrests, no public apologies, just silence. Some said he fled, others whispered he ended it himself. I never looked for the truth, because whatever happened, I had already buried him once. In the end, I didn't need to destroy him completely. The universe had taken care of that for me. But what I didn't expect was how hard it would be to destroy the version of myself that had been built on hate. I had come back from hell to burn him down, and in the process, I almost forgot how to live again. They say revenge sets you free, but they never tell you that freedom feels a lot like loneliness. It's strange, the quiet that follows chaos. After years of plotting, planning, and watching his downfall unfold, there was finally nothing left to do. No more secrets to uncover, no more lies to expose, no more battles to fight. For the first time in a long time, I had silence, the kind that felt too heavy to enjoy. Because when the noise stops, you start to hear everything you buried inside yourself. I thought revenge would fill the void, that once he was gone, I'd finally feel whole again. But standing in that silence, I realized something heartbreaking. Revenge doesn't heal you. It only numbs you long enough to make you believe you're better. I had spent years becoming someone else, someone who could outsmart him, hurt him, dismantle his life piece by piece. And I succeeded. But now, the woman who wanted revenge no longer had a reason to exist. I went back to the place where everything began, the house. It had been sold twice since he left. Different colors, new furniture, strange cars in the driveway. But when I stood across the street and looked at those familiar windows, I saw a ghost. Me, standing behind the glass, still hoping he'd come home a different man. That version of me died a long time ago. But that's the thing about ghosts. They linger. And sometimes they need to see the light before they finally fade away. I took a deep breath and whispered, "You did it. You survived." The words felt foreign in my mouth, like they belonged to someone braver. But as soon as I said them, I felt something shift. Not joy, not closure, just peace. Fragile, quiet peace. In the weeks that followed, I left the city, deleted my old identity, closed every account, every reminder, every tie to that past life. I moved somewhere small, somewhere anonymous. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from him. I was walking toward myself. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. There were nights I woke up sweating, remembering his voice, his betrayal, his hands, and other nights when I missed the way life used to be. Simple, naive, safe. But then I'd remind myself that safety was an illusion built on his lies. And I'd fall asleep knowing that, for the first time, the life I had was mine. One morning, while drinking coffee in my tiny apartment, I saw a headline scroll across the TV. Former CEO Michael Landon declared legally dead after 2 years missing. I stared at the screen for a long time. No picture, no story, just a line of text announcing the end of a man who thought he could cheat fate. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either, because death wasn't my victory. My victory was living, something he never managed to do. I walked outside, into the morning sun, feeling it touch my face. The world looked ordinary. Children running to school, cars passing, someone walking their dog. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't haunted by memories or consumed by vengeance. I was just a woman, breathing, existing, free. I realized that hell isn't a place you go when you die. It's what you live through when someone destroys you and you forget who you are. And coming back from hell doesn't mean seeking revenge. It means reclaiming your soul from the fire. He once told me that power was about control, but he was wrong. Real power is walking away from everything that tried to break you and refusing to let it define who you become. I left my cup on the cafe table, picked up my bag, and started walking with no destination. The world didn't know my story, and it didn't need to. All that mattered was that I had written the ending myself. I came back from hell to destroy him. But in the end, I discovered something far more important. I didn't need to destroy him to win. I just needed to rise from the ashes and never look back. And that's exactly what I did.